Hello, this is Matt with the Danvers Historical Society. Today we're at Glen Magna Farms. Today we're going to be going on two different tours. The first one is going to be us walking around the gardens here and just checking out some of the projects that we've been working on here at Glen Magna Farms, focusing on some of the sustainability aspects. And then after that, we're going to be going on a special tour. We're going to leave the gardens of Glen Magna Farms and then go to my own personal garden, where I've created a new garden last year with the plants that I purchased from our Glen Magna Farms plant sale. So I hope you enjoy, and let's check it out. One of the things that's very near and dear to me is some of the trees that we've been planting at Glen Magna Farms. Let's go check them out.
Entering the Chamberlain Garden, we are struck with the abundance of color and aroma of this historic garden. We are allowed to gently listen to the songs of birds and the low hum of busy insects. This is the sight and sound of the garden expressing itself to us, life bursting into being. It's easy to get lost in the foreground of the Chamberlain Garden and miss the element that allows this experience to be possible. The background of mature trees and shrubs can go unnoticed. This background is the glue that binds the garden experience together and what makes Glen Magna Farms so special. The gardeners who planted the trees to create a canvas of green are not around to see the fruits of their labor. How lucky we are to have this beautiful experience designed by people who had us in mind. What a gift they gave to our generation. Dozens of trees and shrubs have been planted at Glen Magna Farms over the last decade. The hope is that these new trees will take the place of the mature, declining trees in the background. The species of trees selected for planting must meet a certain criteria. Will the trees survive with our changing climate? Can they tolerate future drought or high wind events? Do they serve a role in fulfilling historical accuracy? For example, our historic flowering dogwood tree, planted in 1889, has been declining for years. Sadly, dogwood trees are now susceptible to an invasive fungal disease called anthracnose. We wanted to plant a new flowering dogwood tree next to our declining one, but did not want to plant a tree that would suffer from disease. After some research, we were able to find a naturally occurring cultivar of dogwood called Appalachian Spring. This is a cultivar of flowering dogwood that shows a high resistance to the anthracnose disease. We know that some of the trees we have been planting will not stand the test of time. Yet we hope that enough are able to survive to provide the next generation with the same gift that was provided to ours.
All right, so we're walking through our historic shrubbery garden, and we're going to be entering our south meadow. One of the most special days I can recall at Glen Magna Farms is when the Danvers Historical Society and the community came together to restore an heirloom apple orchard.
In 2015, the Danvers Historical Society and community volunteers planted over 30 heirloom apple trees in the South Meadow. The goal was to restore some of the apple trees that once grew on the farm. The volunteers had a wonderful time planting the trees and learning about how they are important to our heritage. Many of these trees are becoming rare, and we hope that the orchard can serve as a teaching tool to future generations. Furthermore, we hope it can act as a genetic seed bank to help these heirloom apple trees survive into the 21st century.
I once heard from a friend that the best thing for a garden is the gardener's shadow. I think that's really true, especially here at Glen Magna Farms. It's a big job, and it couldn't be done without our dedicated staff. One of the concepts that I believe anybody must consider when starting a garden or managing a property is how to build resiliency into the landscape.
The goal of building resiliency is to try and minimize the inevitable failures that comes along with any garden. Each garden is unique, and the way to build resiliency depends on your site conditions and your goals of the garden. Some of the gardens of Glen Magna Farms are high-maintenance gardens that includes turf, perennials, annuals, trees, and shrubs. The higher the maintenance and complexity of design, the more likely things are to go wrong. Some of the practices we have been implementing to build resiliency in the garden are: choose plants that are tolerant of pest, disease, and drought. Many of these plants turn out to be native to New England and have adapted to our unique climate and soil conditions. The circle bed is the first garden you see when you leave the Chamberlain garden and enter the shrubbery garden. Last year we decided not to plant the high-maintenance tropical annuals in the circle bed, and instead we created a perennial native grass garden. The grasses we chose are all native to North America and comprise the four most common grasses of the tallgrass prairie ecosystem. The long roots of these native grasses ensures they can survive the harshest of droughts New England has to offer. These native grasses are also beautiful. The afternoon sun in late summer makes the grass erupt in a cosmic glow. At one time, the tallgrass prairie was a sea of grass as far as the eye could see. Over 150 million acres once dominated North America. Sadly, less than 4% remains. I wonder what 150 million acres of prairie would have looked like in the afternoon sun. For now, the small circle bed will have to do. For the annuals and perennials that are higher in maintenance or not as resilient, we try to build a soil and water nutrient holding capacity through the use of naturally occurring materials. The soil amendment we use the most would be arborist chips. Arborist chips can be delivered free to your home from most tree care companies. Arborist chips have all the benefits of regular shredded mulch that you can purchase at most garden centers. It holds moisture, regulates soil from temperature extremes, and keeps weeds at bay. The big difference, besides one being free, is the garden center mulch can form a mat on the surface of the garden. Mulch purchased from a garden center must consistently be fluffed to allow water and air to freely move to the soil level. The porous nature of arborist chips allows water to drain freely to the plant root zone. Arborist chips also seem to decompose faster in the landscape, becoming a rich compost in the garden. This in turn can feed the beneficial fungal network that is critical for success in many gardens. Leaf mold is another soil building material we use free of charge. Leaf mold is essentially partially decomposed leaves and needles from the trees of Glen Magna Farms. The water holding capacity of leaf mold is second to none. Acting like a sponge, leaf mold holds water after a summer rain, then slowly releases the moisture to nearby plants. By spring, last year's applied leaf mold will have completely disappeared. Yet it is now serving the garden in another role, providing nutrients to assist the summer garden into being, ensuring the senses that please us so much will return again. The gardens have a rich history, going all the way back to when the first garden was installed by Joseph Peabody in 1814. The gardens we enjoy today were created by the Endicotts and Peabodys and remained in their care until 1958. To the Endicotts and Peabodys, the gardens represented the golden age of American horticulture. We still have many of the original plantings that the family chose for the gardens of Glen Magna Farms. Today, the gardener's role is to try and evoke the spirit of the golden age of American horticulture. How can we evoke those feelings in the garden while also trying to be sustainable? One of the ways we try to achieve this goal is through the use of historic dahlias. Dahlias are some of the most showy and fantastic plants in the world. Their diversity in color, shape, and size showcases their eccentric potential in the garden. The dahlias we choose to grow are from the time period of when the family would have summered at the farm. Dahlias provide high impact in the garden, instantly drawing the visitor's gaze on its wonder. We choose dahlias not just for their high impact, but because they can be sustainable. In the fall, we dig them up and store them into the basement, only to return them to the garden next spring. Dahlias give you the high impact of annuals, but if you store them in the basement, they can give you the advantages of a perennial, coming back year after year.
All right, so let's move on now to the second part of our tour. We're going to be leaving Glen Magna Farms and checking out my own personal garden. This is a garden I created last year with plants I purchased from the Glen Magna Farms Back to Nature plant sale. Well, I hope you enjoyed the tour of Glen Magna Farms. Hope you learned a few things. My personal garden is going to be a little different than Glen Magna Farms. Actually, it's going to be a lot different than Glen Magna Farms. Who am I kidding? It's a different style of gardening. It's obviously much smaller. I think gardening can be for everybody. Whether you have a large yard, small yard, front yard, backyard, simple containers on a patio, anytime you can get your hands in the soil, be outside, it's a great thing.
Last year, we decided to remove areas of our lawn to make room for a garden. The lawn area was difficult to mow and never seemed to grow without lots of care. The first step was creating a list of goals of what we wanted from our garden. A list of some of our goals were: the garden had to be easier to maintain than the previous lawn, require few inputs such as water, compost, fertilizer, and mulch. The plants must be adapted to the conditions we have. Do not fight the site was our mantra. Incorporate as many native species as possible to enhance the biodiversity and create food and habitat for our local wildlife. We decided to use bark mulch the first season to help our new plants become established. Our hope is that carefully placed plants will eventually form a living mulch, filling any gaps of exposed soil. This will help in our goal of relying less on outside inputs. Spotted bee balm is one of my favorite plants, and I thought it would be a great addition to our new garden. Spotted bee balm is a plant that is native to our region in New England and does well in poor soil conditions, in full sun. Be sure to leave the seed heads on as a food source for birds during the winter months. In ideal conditions, seeds overlooked by birds will germinate, filling in any gaps you have in the garden. This can be an asset, since spotted bee balm is a short-lived perennial. There are many different species of milkweed you can choose for your garden. Butterfly weed is a species of milkweed that would tolerate our poor garden soil as well as drought. Its bright orange flowers attracts many types of pollinating insects. Milkweed is the only host species for the monarch butterfly caterpillar. The monarch butterfly has declined by over 80% in North America, mostly due to habitat loss. By planting milkweed in our garden, we hope to bring a little habitat back for this species. Out of all the herbaceous perennials you could choose for your garden, Goldenrod is probably the most beneficial to our local wildlife. There is a species of goldenrod for almost any New England garden. The blue stem goldenrod would be a beautiful addition to the shaded woodland garden. Many of the species of goldenrod are deer and drought tolerant. Contrary to popular garden folklore, goldenrod does not cause hay fever. We are looking forward to watching our new garden grow. Already we have had some failures and we are trying to learn from our mistakes. I feel what is so special about gardening is relationship. The relationship of us shaping the garden into being. And if we allow ourselves to pause amongst our busy labor, we can take notice of how the garden shapes us.